Hey, it's Tony Schiavone, and you're listening to the Wrestling Epicenter. And I would stick around, but I'm desperately out of time.
You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio, featuring the Interactive Interview, courtesy of WrestlingEpicenter.com.
This is Bobby the Brain Heenan, and if you're smart like me, you'll be listening to Interactive Interview. I do all the time.
Oh, man. One take on this one, guys, because I want to be as real as possible. Such an incredible honor to present another edition of Interactive Wrestling Radio. My name is James Walsh, by the way, and this week's guest is a gentleman who I wanted to have on literally from the get-go. From the first time I did an interview, and I spoke to Daniel Edler, who was our host and ended up running IPW UK, he asked me to make a list of people I wanted to interview. And on that 10-person list, that included names like Hulk Hogan, who we had on, Dusty Rhodes, who we had on, Macho Man Randy Savage, who we had on, Francine, who ended up co-hosting our show, the franchise Shane Douglas, Missy Hyatt. I can keep going on and on, but on that list was Tony Schiavone, and he was high up on the list. And for the longest time, after an appearance in TNA, where he seemed very uncomfortable with wrestling in general at that point, and after his subsequent feud with Bobby Heenan, where Bobby Heenan was on our show saying nasty things about him because they didn't stay in touch, I never had Tony Schiavone on the show until now. And you know, I'm an emotional guy, I'll be honest with you. Whenever I get to accomplish something that I view as a goal, something that I view as I set out to do this in 2002 with a goal in mind to do those 10 interviews. And of those 10, I've done 8. The only one I didn't have on was Roddy Piper, and Miss Elizabeth. But this makes the 7th of the 10 that or the 8th of the 10, I guess, that I've had on from that original list, and it means a lot to me. Tony Schiavone, a busy guy in wrestling right now, as you might have heard. Both the commentator, the color commentator for Major League Wrestling Fusion, which is on YouTube, as well as BN Sports. There is no excuse not to watch MLW Fusion. If you get the internet, you get MLW, and you could watch Fusion on YouTube every Monday night. Then watch the Saturday show, which is on every Saturday night on BN Sports. Most cable providers have BN Sports available to you, so if you don't have it, ask for it and get it, because MLW is classic style wrestling, logical booking with hybrid wrestling. Incredible high-risk moves. Tony compares it to a combination of the Cruiserweight division and ECW. So a lot of really good stuff in MLW. And of course, even though we did this interview to promote MLW, given the headlines from earlier in the week, we had to talk about the fact, not that it was a chore by any stretch, that Tony Schiavone has signed on to All Elite Wrestling, AEW. Want to thank Major League Wrestling for helping us get this interview. Want to thank Tony Schiavone for being so gracious with his time. Initially, I said it would be about 15 minutes, and he said, well, I'm driving, so take as long as you'd like. And, man, you can't say that to me, because I'll keep you on the phone for 3 hours, and I'll go full-on Chris Farley interviewing Paul McCartney, saying, hey, remember when you were with the Beatles? That was awesome. I could do that if that's what I had time to do. But when I have a professional environment and a time frame to work within, and I said it about a half hour for myself when he said I had more time, we delivered a hell of an interview. Incredible. I am so happy and fulfilled to present you with the Tony Schiavone interview right here at the Wrestling Epicenter. Be sure and check out our social media at Facebook.com/Wrestling Epicenter. We have 11,000 folks on there, and we're growing every day. At W Epicenter on Twitter. We could use your help on there. I don't really do the twit thing very much, so we want to get more of a presence on there. So if you're listening and within the earshot of my voice, go over and follow us on the Twitter. And I called it the Twitter just then. Wow. Also, YouTube. Hit that subscribe channel if you're listening on YouTube. If you're listening on Facebook Premiere, click that like button. Share this video. Let's let the world hear what Tony Schiavone has to say as he enters a new chapter in his life, both working for Major League Wrestling and AEW. Of course, he also calls baseball and football, and he's a Kiss fan. Man, I got a lot in common with this guy. Let's get to Tony Schiavone right here on the Wrestling Epicenter.
Hi, this is Eric Bischoff. Controversy creates cash, and you're listening to The Pile Driver.
Available now in the archives at interactivewrestlingradio.com. It's our exclusive interview with the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes.
So no, we respect each other in the ring and what we've done, and there's a respect there. And even though if he would say something bad, he kept coming back to that respect thing. People had told me, but there's a respect there. But it's business. Business is business with me and him.
This classic 2005 interview can be heard at WrestlingEpicenter.com and InteractiveWrestlingRadio.com.
Hi, gang. This is Mean Gene Okerlund from World Wrestling Entertainment, reminding you you're where it's at with the interactive interview right here online.
Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio. On the Newsmaker line with me right now is a gentleman who, I'm going to be honest, I might embarrass him a little bit. When I started doing this in 2002, I had a little yellow piece of paper and I made a list of 10 names that I wanted on. And his was one of those names. And finally, it took me, 17 years to get here. But on the Newsmaker line with me right now is the one and only Tony Schiavone. Mr. Schiavone, are you with me?
I'm with you, James. Thanks for that intro. The good news is that 17 years later, I'm still alive because you never know, right?
Yes, you absolutely don't. In fact, one of the other names out there was Roddy Piper. I just interviewed his daughter yesterday, which is kind of cool.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, well, yeah, unfortunately, since I left Nitro or since we stopped doing Nitro and since I was out of the wrestling business, unfortunately, a lot of people have passed on. But that's life. I mean, that's the way it is when you get older. So, but thanks for having me. It's great being with you. Thank you.
Very good. And I have tried you in the past, and I remember you were very gracious and polite, but I called your radio station and you said, I want nothing to do with the wrestling industry. It's nothing personal, but I just don't want anything to do with it. And this was about 10 years ago. And so when you were announced to be the announcer for MLW, my first thought was, wow, I'm glad they got him back in a wrestling capacity. What made you decide to get back involved in our crazy business once again?
Yeah, crazy is right. I tell you what got me the decision was I'm really big, and I discovered this after WCW closed. I'm really big now on working with and for people that are good people, and Court Bauer is a good person.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so. Talked to Court a couple of times, got a good feeling for him, did some things with him before he got the BN Sports deal. And of course, it's a little bit of money. It was, and any little bit helps when you're, trying to cull a bunch of jobs together like I was doing. But I decided I might as well do it. And then when I showed up at some of the tapings, I got a real good feeling from the guys. Like Tom Lawler,
mm-hmm.
And some of the guys worked for us. Sammy Callahan worked for us back then at that time, and Darby Allin was working with us back when I first started with MLW. I got a good feeling from the guys about, I don't know, their respect to the business and how much they loved my work. And then I got to thinking, you know what, if they feel I'm a big enough name, which I never really was like that. If they feel I'm a big enough name and they want me to help their career, and I can help their career, then, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try to put these kids over and see if we can make their matches exciting. So it all kind of fell together when Court Bauer came to or got in touch with me.
Mm-hmm.
But again, at my age, James, you can't really put a price on happiness. And listen, I'm telling you right now, you probably know this as well as anybody else. If you work for good people and you're happy in your job, that's worth a lot of money in itself.
Absolutely.
So I was happy, and I'm happy with the radio station that I'm working with still. I'm happy with the Georgia Bulldogs. I'm happy working for the Atlanta Braves. They're all great people to work for. So that's where I am in my life right now.
Yeah, and you're one of the more busy guys out there because you got all these jobs,
Yeah.
and we'll get to one of the other jobs because it's the elephant in the room at the moment, but we'll bring it up in a moment.
Sure.
So MLW style, WCW, a lot of people remember during the Monday Night Wars, one of the big things you guys had was the cruiserweight division where you guys really did do wrestling different than we had ever seen before.
Right.
MLW has just so much built upon that with how high flying it is. Was it a surprise to you? I don't know how much you watched in the off time to see just how much of that cruiserweight style had found its way into the mainstream of wrestling.
Well, first of all, when I left Nitro, our final Nitro in 2001, in March 2001, I really went cold turkey. I left the business, didn't watch anything until I started doing the podcast again with Conrad in 2017. So from 2001 to January to the Royal Rumble of 2017, I didn't watch any wrestling at all. So I didn't know about the style that was going on. But it was pretty apparent that it had changed a great deal. And it was pretty apparent that it's more high spot based and a lot of high flying moves or maneuvers, whatever you want to call it. So I felt, and Court and I talked about this a lot, I felt, as a Court, I don't know if the business may have passed me by. I don't know if I'm doing, back then I didn't think, in the 90s I was involved with the business on a daily basis. Now I've come back into the business where the actual wrestling product changed. So I don't know if I'm actually going to be good for you. And he said, no, you're doing fine. You're doing great. So I started doing the Rich Bocchini started doing the play-by-play, and I just started doing the color commentary. And I think it kind of worked from there. But I was, I think what we're seeing now with MLW and other promotions, I think what we're seeing now is a combination of what we did in the cruiserweight division back then and what they used to do in ECW. I think the ECW style, crazy stuff, jumping out of the ring on top of chairs and flying.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of stood the test of time.
It sure has.
I've watched old ECW matches now with Conrad. We just recently watched One Night Stand 2006, and we've seen some of the other things. And that's more, that's kind of where we're headed right now.
I would agree. And speaking of where we're headed right now, you're actually in the car on the way down to StarCast 3. Is that correct?
Yes. We got a weekend in Chicago, StarCast 3. Unfortunately, even though I have signed with AEW, unfortunately I won't be there for the event All Out because I've got a Georgia football game on Saturday. But I'll be at StarCast today, tomorrow, and Friday doing some shows. And thanks for fitting me into what's going on with you, because I know I hope the connection's okay and everything sounds okay.
Oh, you sound wonderful. I appreciate you doing this with us. You mentioned signing with AEW. It's kind of been the elephant in the room. Of course, we want to shine MLW as much as humanly possible, but you're all over the wrestling news lines right now. You've signed with All Elite Wrestling, the company that's going to be back on television on TNT. Let me ask you this. In March of 2001, when you guys signed off that final Nitro, did you ever think there was any chance that you'd be back on TNT broadcasting doing wrestling?
No, and I tell you why. I had a very bad feeling about the Turner people when I left. And the good news is the Turner people that were there when I left are no longer around. And I'm talking about the people who ran WCW, basically. No, I never thought I would do it again. I never thought wrestling would be on TNT again, because they were very, I guess, under Brad Siegel and Jamie Kellner, and I don't know, and I don't know the history. I guess they didn't want wrestling on their networks anymore.
Thank you for using the word Brad Siegel. I might be the only person on the planet that when he writes his knowing it all editorials about what happened, I'm the only one who uses the words Brad Siegel. Nobody else seems to want to include him in that. So,
yeah. Well, I don't want to go into my feelings about him nor my feelings about Jamie Kellner, because that's all gone now. But I never thought we'd do it again. I thought when I walked away from Panama City that night that I truly was done with the wrestling business. I'm like that, James. I like to move on with my life. I like to, the people who I've worked with in the past, I'm not good at staying in touch with people, which is my fault. Thank goodness for guys like Jim Ross and Arn Anderson and guys who are still my friends in the business. I stay in touch with them, but no, that was a long-winded answer to your question. I never thought I would do it again. Never wanted to do it again. So it's crazy. I was talking to Gary Juster. I don't know if you're familiar with Gary, but he's a promoter with Ring of Honor, who used to be a promoter with us. And I talked to Gary, and I said, isn't it like the craziest business ever? And he said, yeah, it's the craziest business. I said, but you get involved in it and you just fall in love with it. And even though the business may crap on you, which it has many times, you still come back to it once you're in it. So it's like the flu.
Yep, absolutely. Like I said, we will circle back to MLW for sure, but there is some discrepancy on the headlines that are going out there right now as to what exactly you've been hired to do with AEW. Right. Some say you're going to be on the announce team. Others say you're a producer. Can you shed any light on that?
Okay, well, I do know I'm a producer. I'm going to be working on a lot of the videos you see in the shows. I'm going to be working behind the scenes when the live shows are going on, the TNT shows. Now, I met with Tony Khan. I've met with obviously Cody. We do some production here in Atlanta. Cody and I actually live very close to each other. So when I talked to Tony Khan, the idea was that I would do like control centers and I would do a lot of on-camera stuff, but would not be on the broadcast team because his broadcast team was in place, and that was fine with me. I'm not looking to come in and shoehorn anybody out of the broadcast team. I'm not. Excalibur's a great guy. Alex Marvez is just a talented guy and a great guy. But I know that Jim Ross has always wanted me with him. I know that. He's pushed for that. So I told Tony, I said, listen, I really want to work for you, and I really want to be a part of this, but I do not want to be seen as the guy that's coming in to shoehorn his way into the broadcast team. So I don't know what has happened since Tony and I have talked last, but as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, I'm just going to be on the show in some capacity. I don't know what that is. I didn't expect, and I don't expect right now I'm going to be a part of the broadcast team. It's not any, there's not any official announcement been made for that, but I'm just going to have my hand in the broadcast some way.
Very good. And your relationship with the Rhodes family goes back, way back to the 80s. It's pretty cool. If you go back and watch like Slamboree 95, you can see a 10-year-old Cody standing behind Dusty, getting inducted into the WCW Hall of Fame. You've said online that the reason you started doing stuff for AEW in the first place was because you wanted to help Cody out whenever you could. Are the Rhodes as close of a family members as or friends as they seem to be?
Oh yeah, yeah. I have a Cody's mom and Dusty's wife Michelle. She is still very close with us, with our family. with my daughter. They go to the same Catholic church together. We had the christening of my grandson this year, and Michelle was part of it, and we all went out to brunch together. And so I've always been very close to the family. I have I remember going to high school wrestling events because my son wrestled too, where Cody was wrestling here in Georgia, and he was a state champion and a great wrestler, and just has. I mean, he's different than his dad. I think we all know that. There's no one ever been like his dad, but he still has a great, attractive personality that draws you to him, and he has so much confidence, and I just feel that, and I felt that anytime I could help him out, I want to, and that's why I did a thing that kind of got me in trouble, and it's my fault. That's just the way I am. Because sometimes I don't think things through. He called me one day. He said, "Hey, can you do something on camera for us?" And I said, "Sure," because it's Cody, and I'll do anything for him at all. And so I did a thing on camera, and it ended up on. And I'm thinking, "Oh shit, I'm contracted to MLW. I didn't even check it out with Court, and that didn't sit well with Court, and I understand that." Because now all of a sudden I'm on this AEW thing, and everybody says, "Oh, Tony's in AEW," which I wasn't. But that's just me trying to help him out.
Right, exactly.
And, so yeah, we live close to each other. I consider him a friend, and I'll do anything for that family at all. Now Dustin's another character. Dustin is old. He's decrepit. And I feel like that. Maybe I can help him with a bedpan or a colostomy bag or something. No, I'm kidding.
I know.
I just, God, I mean, Dustin and I went, Dustin, when I was wrestling, I know Cody was 10 years old, but Dustin was a kid too.
Right.
And now here he is with a grown daughter and everything. It's just absolutely amazing.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, the reaction of Court Bauer to what you did. I guess that begs the question, and we kind of already know the answer, but to kind of put any rumors that might be circulating out there to bed, you are still, even with this AEW contract, going to continue work with MLW, correct?
That's right. As a matter of fact, we're going to be doing a voiceover session in a couple of weeks. So that is true. That was part of the deal. Court, before he would, I was kind of at the mercy of Court Bauer, which is not really a bad place to be because he's such a good businessman and a good guy. I had talked to Tony Khan, and and Court Bauer said, he said, "We can work something out. I just need to talk to Tony." So he and Tony got together, and again, you've got two guys who run wrestling and two guys who are good businessmen watching out for their product, but also realize that we're in a different era now. So they worked out a deal to where I can still do MLW and I'm still going to work for AEW as well. So I think the fact that you see MJF doing MLW stuff and AEW stuff. And I think that's good. I think it's good for these kids and good for the wrestling to be involved with anything, and shine a light on anything. I think my appearance on AEW is going to help MLW. Although I'm not going to be promoting MLW on AEW, and I think my appearance. I just think that the other side, the flip side, is good too.
I agree. It's going to be awesome to see. And, as a fan who, I'm 38. I'm going to be 38 in September. I like I said, you're kind of the voice of my childhood, from your WWF stuff, from your TBS stuff to, all the way through the Monday Night Wars. You saw it all, but you also saw the bad. You saw everything crumble with WCW. I was supposed to interview you to promote a game I don't think you got paid for, the Acclaimed Legends of Wrestling game.
Oh my God! Yeah, how about that?
So yeah, they stiffed me on something too, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Yeah. They couldn't have been avoided. I guess my question is, where we are now. You know, you mentioned 2001 to 2019. Here we are now, and wrestling is thriving. WWE is still doing big business. MLW has got a national TV deal. AEW with TNT just really shaking up the world. Did you ever think we'd be back where we are now?
No, I never did. I always thought that what made wrestling great back in the day that I was doing Nitro was the war that was going on. And it was a real war behind the scenes, but it also was a war that was on TV. I thought that helped elevate the product.
Mm-hmm.
I think the lack of competition for Vince McMahon up until this time has helped the resurgence of the product as well, because there's a want for something different out there. And for AEW to be successful, we have to offer something different than Vince, I think. It's all wrestling. I get that,
Mm-hmm.
but we still have to offer something different. I never thought though that. I mean, when I heard that AEW was going to be on TNT, it absolutely blew my mind. It really did. That, my gosh, you know, wrestling's going to be on Turner again. I mean, listen. When we in the '90s, television's different now. I know that. I mean, I very rarely watch my cable TV. I watch stuff on Apple TV all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I watch Hulu and Netflix, the DC Universe, and I even got the CBS Pay app because I love Star Trek, and so I know TV is different now because you can take TV with you anywhere and watch it anytime you want.
Mm-hmm.
But to think that we would be back on a legitimate network just shows you how much wrestling it means to TV throughout the years. It's the TV sport.
It is, definitely.
So it's crazy, isn't it?
It definitely is crazy where we're at.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you didn't keep in contact with people, and it reminded me of a gentleman I interviewed, thankfully, before he lost the ability to speak, and that was the late, great Bobby Heenan. Instead of going into, whatever was what was in the later years of his life, do you mind if I ask, do you have any funny stories for being on the road with Bobby the Brain Heenan?
Yeah, Bobby was a very, as we know from watching him on TV and listening to him on TV, I still think that Bobby Heenan was one of the funniest men in America. I think Bobby Heenan, if somebody would have taken the time to work with him, I think he could have been a stand-up comedian. I think he could have toured. I think he could have had his own television show. I know the WWE wanted to start that at one time, but I really think he could have done that. And he was funny on TV, but he was funnier behind the scenes. And he used to do things. He used to do practical jokes all the time to make us laugh. When he was going to move to Atlanta
Mm-hmm.
from Florida, back when he and his wife Cindy and his daughter Jess all moved to the Atlanta area, they were looking for a house. And up here in Cobb County, there's a street called Trickham.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he thought that would be the greatest thing in the world if he would live on a street called Trickham, because he always liked to trick people. So there was this one time where we were at a convenience store. It was me and him and Mike Tenay and Lee Marshall.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just, he did this a number of times. He would just be in one of those moods where he wanted to be really silly. So we would be standing in line. It would be one of the older style convenience stores. We'd be standing in line getting whatever we were going to get. And as you go up to a counter of some of these convenience stores, as you know, the counter's pretty cluttered up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
These different things, these impulse buy things that they want you to look at,
Mm-hmm.
pick up,
Right.
buy. So he got up, and I never will forget. We were in Salisbury, Maryland. We just finished working at I think it's the Wacomico Youth and Civic Center there, and he had maybe a 6-pack of beer, I'm not sure, and whatever it was, and he put it up on the counter, in a way that everything fell down. we knew what he was doing on purpose. And he put it up and everything. And this lady behind the counter, he was, when something like that would happen, he would be so apologetic. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so clumsy. I do things like this all the time. Then he said, here, let me help you. Well, now when he says that, and of course she's letting him help, now he's going to pick it up a notch.
Uh-oh.
So he tries to pick up something, he drops it. He tries to pick up something else, he drops it. He tries to, and this is where I really dropped my stuff and left the store when he did this. He drops something towards the lady and he reaches for it to try to catch it, and he grabs her in the boob. And he puts his hand on her boob and he goes, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And when he did that, it was just like, oh. And it was probably in 2019.
Yeah.
He would be considered some sort of sexual harassment form. I don't know.
Yeah, hashtag Me Too or something, right? It
was just a guy trying to help her clean up, and he reached for something. It was falling on her, and he missed it, and he grabbed her in the boob by mistake. And it was all just a big joke and big fun. And he did that many times. He would always do something silly in stores to make us laugh. Yeah. If it was just us standing in line, him talking loud and saying something inappropriate just to make us laugh. So he was always on.
One of my favorite calls that you made was the end of Bash at the Beach 96. You said, Hulk Hogan, you can go to hell, straight to hell. And that kind of cemented the magnitude of everything that was happening that night. Is there any career-defining moments?
Yeah, I think that is. I think that's a career-defining moment. I think a lot of people would say that the butts in the seats comment was a memorable moment as well. I don't know if you call it career-defining or not. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's funny I'm on Twitter, but I don't stay on there much because there's a lot of miserable people on there, and I just keep them out of my life. And so when it was announced that, I'm with AEW, I kind of scrolled through the stuff, and there was a lot of, that'll put butts in the seats. So, I mean, that's out there, and if fans want to consider what I said a big part of the wrestling wars, I feel honored. I feel that I didn't realize I had that much pull or that much impact on the business.
Yeah, I know.
So that.
I was going to say, the other one that they kind of say a lot is, he always said that it was the greatest night in the history of our industry. And it's like, isn't that like the same thing as business is about to pick up? Why is that different?
Yeah, I know. Well, that line, just to let you know, James, that line was something that I started saying, and I knew people were, some people were saying, he says that too much. Some people were saying, God, we love it when he says it. So I kept saying it just kind of almost as a joke, almost being silly, because sometimes they would want me to hype stuff so much to the point to where, what the hell else are you going to say? I very much, at the very end of if you'll recall, at the very end of Nitro, when I would call a match, I wouldn't really call a match. I was just hyping a pay-per-view coming up. And the real magic to me of wrestling was making the guys in the ring, or the women in the ring now, seem bigger than life, elevating them as stars, not promoting watching on pay-per-view. It's promoting these people as athletes. So it got real silly, and I started, and it's my fault, I guess. I started saying, well, okay, if they want me to hype it, I'm going to be way over the top silly. You'll never hear that again. I promise you. I mean, I'll hype stuff, but I won't do what we were doing back then. So yeah, I was known for that. But you know what? There's something out there, I guess, that Chris McDonald built recently. I don't know if you saw it on social media, where he goes and he shows the last when the Sting and Flair wrestled that last Nitro, and if you hear I was listening to my commentary doing that. I didn't realize how emotional I was that night. And I think if you go back and listen to that, I think that that's a part of when I'm thinking about some of my high points as a commentator. I think if you go back and you listen to the emotion of my voice and me trying to talk about how special WCW was for us, I think you'll go back and hear that that's a big point in my life too. Although, when I think back on it right now, I didn't realize I said all those things at the end. My very last match, I called it Ric Flair and Sting in 19.
Definitely an emotional night. Being honest with you, it's going to make me sound like a psychopath, but I have a scar on the back of my hand because when I went online and people were saying, "Oh, now it's getting great because now we get all the dream matches," I was so frustrated because people didn't understand the magnitude of it. I went for a walk and I just punched this wall and I tore my hand open, almost Goldberg and the limo style. It was kind of stupid, but there you go.
Oh, well, you need some psychiatric help, and I've got some people that can talk.
Definitely.
Yeah, you know what? But let me say this, James. It's people like you that have a passion for the business and have a love for the business and remember the business. It's people like you that the reason we're still viable.
Absolutely.
The reason that AEW is doing what it's doing, MLW is doing what it's doing. It's people like you that are passionate of the business. That make us relevant now, and we appreciate it. We appreciate you and everybody out there who punches walls and are like you.
Not my happiest or shining moment, but I appreciate that. All right, last question for you, then I can let you on your merry way. MLW has a show coming up in Dallas. It's War Chamber, paying homage. This is what this company does that I love so much. They're paying homage to the late, great Gary Hart. Such great things that MLW does. What do you have thoughts going forward as we head towards MLW's first pay-per-view, which will be Super Fight in November, as well as the War Chamber event on September 7th?
Well, I'm with you when they pay homage to Gary Hart, and I worked with Gary when I first started the business. He had a great mind for the business and was a good guy, and I think it's going to. What I like about MLW right now is the talent they have. I mean, they really. Of course, done a great job of going out and getting some guys who are very, very talented. I mean, obviously, we call him the Samoan Werewolf. He's spectacular. He really is. And I think it's going to be great seeing the Von Erichs wrestling in Dallas again. Those kids are tremendous.
Yes, they are.
And I like the idea of the War Chamber too. I think it's innovative. I think it's pretty exciting, and I'm glad to be associated with a company that remembers the past, because we all remember the past. And see, that's one thing that I think there was some people were saying, oh, Schiavone's too old to be doing it again. He and JR, they're getting old guys to be on their broadcasts again. Well, people remember that stuff, and we're talking to people out there who. That Vince no longer talks to. That is ignored. So I'm really excited about it. Dallas was always a great town, always a great wrestling city. So it's going to be a good
Absolutely. Night. One of the talents that I love is Alexander Hammerstone. He's just the perfect wrestler.
Yeah. Right, and absolutely is. And so I'm very happy to be. And that's one of the things. I'm glad I was able to continue to do things with Cord because of what you just said about him recognizing, remembering the business, and honoring the business. Even if you listen to the open of MLW, our television show, you even hear Dusty Rhodes saying MLW, baby. So that's Cord Bauer, loving the business, and thank you very much. That's Cord Bauer, loving the business and remembering the business and making it a part of his promotion.
Absolutely. Well, you got a busy week ahead. You got StarCast, you got football, we got MLW, we got AEW. You're spreading yourself thin, but we can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this with us. Before I let you go, can I ask for one last favor from you? You probably already know what it's going to be.
Whatever you need, buddy.
Do you mind giving me a station ID, just saying this is Tony Schiavone and you're listening to the Wrestling Epicenter?
Okay. Hey, this is Tony Schiavone. You're listening to the Wrestling Epicenter. I'm sorry, let me do it again.
No problem.
It's Epicenter.
Yes, sir.
Right? Okay. Hey, it's Tony Schiavone, and you're listening to the Wrestling Epicenter. And I would stick around, but I'm desperately out of time.
You maniacs, so what you gonna do?
The greatest wrestler on earth.
Oh, yeah. All right, sports fans out there.
You're listening to the Interactive Interview. And you're listening to The Blaze?
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
And you are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
Let me talk to you, dummies.
Hey, baby. Open your third eye.
I set the guy on fire.
And you are listening to the Interactive Interview.
You're listening to the Hour Slam Wrestling.
Hey, you're checking out Interactive Wrestling Radio.
And I'm so pleased and so honored to be guest on the Wrestling Epicenter. I've heard a lot about you guys.
You see all the charisma.
And sit up straight when I'm talking to you.
I wrestled each one of them more times than I care to remember.
The living legend.
And you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
Guess what? You're listening to The Blaze. Check it out. Interactive Wrestling Radio. You are on the Wrestling Epicenter. Don't get off. It's showtime! Woo!
One more time, it's Vader time.
To create some things that had never been done.
And you are listening to the Interactive Interview.
And you're listening to The Blaze.
You are watching Interactive Wrestling Radio.
And you're in the Epicenter.
Make sure to tune in each and every week.
Phenomenal one.
He is the best wrestler I've ever seen.
I could care less. And of course, you're listening to the Interactive Interview. And I want all my peeps, all the Christian Coalition, to know they're listening to The Blaze. Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Where else in the Wrestling Epicenter? From a purist point of view.
They're great. By ignorance or arrogance.
You're where it's at, right here online.
If you're smart like me, you'll be listening to Interactive Interview. I do all the time.
You're listening to The Blaze.
Interactive Wrestling Radio. You are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
Rickabody!
Just a lot of hijinks and immaturity at its finest.
The NWA World's Heavyweight Champion, and you're listening to the Interactive Interview. Is that really it? Is that it? Can I hold it? Can I touch it?
For different bullshit political reasons, and
You're listening to the Interactive Interview.
and you are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
And you are on the Wrestling Epicenter.
World Heavyweight Champion, and you're listening to Blaze 1260 AM.
But at the end of the day, it's about charisma.
I got 2 words for you.
He's invincible and untouchable.
The Rocker.
The World Champion.
You're listening to the Interactive Interview. You're listening to 3 Count Wrestling. Yeah!
And you're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
The torch is passed to the next generation, and it's still burning brightly.
I am the past, present, and future professional wrestling. Welcome to the Interactive Interview.
Barry Horowitz is a great wrestler. His opponents just wrestle great.
The needs of the many far outweigh the needs of the few.
You are listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
There was a genuine brothership.
You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
It's probably outrageous. Probably doesn't make sense. Kind of pinch myself to be sure I'm still here if it wasn't gone already.
And you're in the Wrestling Epicenter.
He's very different than what you see on TV.
You better be watching and listening to 3 Count Wrestling, or else I'm going to kick your stinking teeth in.
You're listening to the Interactive Wrestling Radio.
And you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
Why not me? Why wasn't I pushed like that?
I said, this is all about respect, Ruby. And you're listening to the Interactive Interview. Yeah.
You boys, apart from each other, are the shits. After a while, you just don't give a shit.
2005 and 2006 is not back in the day.
You're in the wrestling epicenter.
I'll be honest with you, I don't even remember doing that one.
And you're listening to Inactive Interview. Prime time, baby.
My lineage carries me to higher ground.
And the gospel, according to the fallen angel, says that you are listening to the interactive interview.
And you're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
There is a little bit of everything for everybody in this promotion.
Oh, my brother, testify.
Interactive Wrestling Radio. Keep listening and have yourself an eargasm.
Interactive Interview. That's number one, baby.
Thank you very much.
I don't think they have any guts.
My brother from another.
Trying to teach wrestling the right way to let them know what it takes.
Because Jimmy and I really weren't wrestlers per se. You know, we're more showmen.
Pick up your copy, Woo Mercy Daddy. While you're here, baby, stay.
And I'm glad to be right here on the Interactive Interview.
I don't want to come into this thing too hot.
And you're listening to the Wrestling Epicenter.
I decided to return as a world-class wrestler.
And you are now listening to the Wrestling Epicenter. TikTok.
And you better keep listening.
On your radio dial.
And if you don't listen to it, I'm going to come down and knock down your door and turn it on for you.
Or I'll come out of your computer and body slam your ass. You're catching me on the interactive interview. Sweet.
Hello, everybody.
The Wrestling Epicenter.
And you're listening to Interactive Radio.
And you are listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio. Oh, ba, ba, ba. Hello.
Hey, interview, George. Oh.
The only thing I do is stomp and punch and kick, bite. You're listening to the Interactive Interview.
Oh, baby. You're tuning in to The Blaze.
You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Don't be a Melvin and get into the Wrestling Epicenter.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Hey, man, you're talking about future world champion, baby.
No offense, my friend. No offense. You're one of the good guys. You're one of the good ones.
Hey, thanks a lot. I really enjoyed talking with you guys.
I really have Terry Funk to credit.
The interactive interview.
You're listening to the Interactive Interview.
And I'm not mad because I'm interactive.
Been going to Wrestling Epicenter.
Stay tuned and feel the...
Well, everybody knows yes to that. Nobody. Breaking necks and cashing checks right here in the Epicenter.
Hey, why don't we call the finishing move the Chronic Kick?
And you are listening to the Interactive Interview.
You're listening to the interactive interview, the second best tag team in the world today.
To the Interactive Interview. If you don't like that, sorry about your damn luck.
You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Remember me? I'm one guy who was afraid of man, who was a man's man.
Well, I already didn't like him worth of shit. I mean, excuse my language. The shotgun deal is the biggest boom deal. Talk about gimmicks going bad.
Oh, interactive interview. Tough guy.
MAD USA, made in the USA, baby. You are listening to Interactive Interview.
You are listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
And you're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Be a man or be a woman and say it to my face.
You're listening to the Interactive Interview.
Well, I haven't been called that in almost 20 years.
You're in the Wrestling Epicenter.
And made it look like you were really killing somebody or being killed.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
I got my gun out and I was going to shoot him.
The Wrestling Epicenter.
I appreciate y'all talking to me this long. Most people done hung up on me.
And you're listening to Interactive
Wrestling Radio.
All right.
We took care of the business, guys. We really took care of the business.
You're listening to the Interactive Interview.
make sure you listen to the Interactive Wrestling Radio.
And you're listening to the Wrestling Epicenter.
Time to listen, and if you like what you heard, I'm glad. If you didn't like what you heard, well, go fuck yourself. Written in wrestling before that day was considered the Old Testament, and we were going to write the New Testament.
It was anti-establishment, it was cool, it was hip, it was a bunch of guys having a good time.
I do remember that you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
I love Lucy.
And you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
Nevermore.
You were listening to the Interactive Interview.
Stop trying to ride my coattail.
You listen to the Interactive Interview.
It just clicked. It just clicked from the beginning.
You're listening to the Interactive Interview, so don't sing it, just swing it.
Nothing else comes close.
Interactive Interview.
Being the drizzling shit, they'll follow gracefully.
The entire audience was clapping.
The Blaze rock. You got to listen right here. Interactive Interview.
You're listening to the Interactive Interview, and remember, we are huge rock stars.
Let's go with looks that kill. You're listening to me on the Weekend Wars of Wrestling on the Wrestling Epicenter.
Hello, ladies.
And it was Sexiest Man on Earth.
I'm not just the coolest. I'm not just the best.
I'm from Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
You're listening to the Interactive Interview.
And you're listening to The Blaze, 1260 AM.
I hear it all the time, baby.
The Wrestling Epicenter.
You're listening to The Blaze.
You are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
And you are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
And plus, it's a cool name. And you are in the Epicenter.
So do you want to play wrestling?
And you are listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
When you look at a group of, like, the Nitro Girls, then you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
Be as good as the guys, if not better.
And you're listening to The Blaze.
And really, really want to prove myself to those fans.
You are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
Turn it up.
And I love being interactive with these guys.
And you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
Capture some of that magic.
You are listening to the Interactive Interview.
I'd love to see everyone at my website.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Oh, look at me. I'm trying so hard.
And you're listening to the Wrestling Epicenter.
He really inspired me a lot. Everybody loves porn. Everybody loves nude girls, you know? You can't go wrong.
You're listening to me on the Interactive Interview.
Oh, yeah. right. Oh, my God.
You're listening to 3 Count Wrestling.
The standard, yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much the standard, you know.
What about y'all, the Interactive Interview?
If the position was offered to me, I sure as hell wouldn't turn it down.
And you are listening to Wrestling Epicenter. Check it out.
Wow, that was unbelievable. You're listening to the Interactive Interview.
Ready to shake things up on here and have some fun.
And you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
And you're listening to Wrestling Epicenter.
It's not that you're old, it's that I'm really young. The greatest online radio show of all time is the Interactive Interview.
They really popped for it, so you never seen a girl do that move.
You're listening to Interactive Wrestling. I would like to say he's a smart man. You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio. Bam!
I try my best to be a good role model.
On the Wrestling Epicenter. He didn't care who he stepped on to get where he needed to go. Interactive Wrestling Radio. Things have been going amazing so far.
You are in the Wrestling Epicenter. Pinkies up.
She's so kooky.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Hey, I am a legend in my own mind.
We're in the Wrestling Epicenter.
Stupid for working for free. Stupid.
And you are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
My mom and dad were both wrestlers. I grew up in it. I love the business.
And you are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
One of the best champions that the business ever had.
You're listening to the interactive interview.
I think you used the key word. It was run professionally. It certainly was.
Gordon says, come on, I'll help you. And he took him under his wing.
He was definitely a different person.
And you are listening to James and Patrick.
I love working with these guys.
You're listening to the interactive interview with James Walsh and Dan Edler.
You know what it is, then? We've only got a few left. Pick up the phones right now and dial.
I've been to the psych ward 6 times during my writing.
Okay, the last one I couldn't, I gave him. I thought it was a horrible rip. And maybe it was.
If you've never been, guys, and you're a fan of wrestling, come on out.
And more questions about WrestleMania 3. And I'll do all the other WrestleManias.
If you're writing a love story and you've never been in love,
sometimes it may not be exactly true, but we're talking about pro wrestling.
You're listening to the interactive interview.
We partied with them every damn night.
The above average, the interactive interview.
I haven't heard a complaint about him yet.
Listening to interactive radio, and you better not touch that dial, or your thumbs will be broken.
I like Elvis. The interactive interview. You wish you could have that moment back after you've been on TV for a while so you actually enjoy it.
If you want to go anywhere, you have any kind of substance or anything that's worth a crap, you're in the politics.
Listen, just let me be me.
He just magnified himself by 10.
Everybody's looking for a place, and there's so many wrestlers out there right now.
Nobody has beaten that record yet.
The Wrestling Epicenter.
And you're tuned in to the Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Oh, hell yeah.
And you are listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
You asked me excellent question.
And against some other little bastards.
No, this is a wrestling exit. Always related to the wrestling. You are listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio. Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Interactive interview.
Yeah, the boys are playing. You know, it's just, I wish they'd go to sleep. And you are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
What's your incentive? You see, athletes can't be allowed to sit in a comfort zone.
Memphis Wrestling was better than the event we just saw.
From professional wrestling to sports entertainment.
This division is very important to me.
To the interactive interview.
Controversy creates cash, and you're listening to the Pile Driver. Interactive Wrestling Radio. Oh, what a rush. You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Question for Penta in Spanish, please. Tell me, ánimo.
Órale, arriba la raza.
Viva la raza.
The interactive interview. Arriba!
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
And this is live from the Wrestling Epicenter.
And you are listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
The Interactive Interview.
You put it in the Hall of Fame, you'll never be forgotten. And you're in the Epicenter.
You know, it was when they first gave it to me, it was a little tough because, wearing all the makeup.
On the year of the Epicenter. You know, now looking back, I'm sure there's a lot of people going, God, I wish there was a WCW around.
Like it or not, you are listening to the Pile Driver.
See you there, my children. Bring them all.
And you're in the Epicenter.
So I looked around the dressing room, nobody moved.
And you're in the Epicenter.
Biggest event of the entire year.
And you're in the Wrestling Epicenter.
Really, I didn't really want to do it.
The Wrestling Epicenter. Yes, sir.
You know, those guys helped pave the way.
And you are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
If they give you that opportunity, it's because of your hard work.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
The Wrestling Epicenter.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
And you are inside the Wrestling Epicenter.
You can go out and do 2 or 3 things and be able to get over it.
I don't think they're real concerned with historical accuracy.
I almost killed the son of a gun in Japan one night.
Over and over. Now I'm back on, and now you piss me off.
Let me liven up the party a little bit with a little song.
Who's next?
423 get fame. That's 423 get fame.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
And you are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
And you're in the Wrestling Epicenter.
The Epicenter.